Imagine that you're cruising down the street and a car hits you and injures your leg. Or maybe you slip and fall at a business. How much is your leg injury worth? Hold up. A quick word of caution before we dive in. There's no guarantee that you'll get any money for your leg injury case. You see, there's a whole bunch of stuff that can make or break your case's value. For example, not all insurance companies are equal. Some are more likely to pay fair value and some will fight you for every penny. And don't expect a low-paying insurer to suddenly turn generous. That's like expecting a leopard to change its spots. But proving fault matters more than the insurance company in leg injury payouts. Like, what if the driver who hit you or the owner of that sketchy sidewalk where you tripped weren't technically at fault? In that case, you'll likely be stuck with a growing pile of medical bills and zero compensation. In personal injury cases, you're entitled to money for medical bills, lost wages, and yes, the often misunderstood pain and suffering. Today, I'll break down how different leg injuries can massively impact the pain and suffering part of your claim. I'm focusing on the full value of your pain and suffering. I won't be lowering the pain and suffering value for hurdles like difficulty proving liability or you being at fault. Trust me, as you see, there are always challenges. Add up your pain and suffering, medical bills, and lost income, and voila, you have the full value of your case. You then lower it by any factors that decrease the value of your case. I'm going to start with the most valuable leg injuries and then work our way down to ones that usually aren't worth as much. Now picture your neighbor, let's call him Bob. While driving, Bob got into an accident that wasn't his fault. Now he's facing the most extreme leg injury, an above-the-knee amputation. The pain and suffering value here often starts at $1 million. But why? Because Bob has to relearn walking, and let's be honest, society is judgmental when it comes to appearance. How many models do you see on TV ads that are missing their entire leg? Let's flip the script to one of my real clients. He slipped and fell, already had a diseased foot, and after the fall, the infection worsened. He ended up with a below-the-knee amputation. The place where he fell argued that there was nothing wrong that caused him to fall. I worked on this case with another law firm and we settled his tough claim for just over $190,000. So even if you think you'll get $1 million for your injury, you've got to factor in the risks like proving the other person was liable or if the jury believes that your injury was pre-existing. Let's say you've got a below-the-knee amputation like my client. Life's a bit easier because you still have a knee, making it easier to adapt to a prosthetic leg. But if the amputation is above the knee, every step you take will remind you of the complication. Imagine you're Peter, a young man who loves life. One unfortunate day, you're on a moped heading down the street in Miami. A car is heading in the opposite direction and makes a left-hand turn and you crash into it. Boom, your world turns upside down. You've broken your thigh bone, the femur, and need surgery. The pain is unimaginable and your first thought is, how will I be able to support my family or myself? Peter was my client and Peter got the full $35,000, the max insurance payout from the other driver and owner of the car that hit him. Now, you may be saying,
I'd never accept $35,000 for a femur fracture if I was in Peter's same accident.
And I tell you that you are wrong in this instance. But first, I'll agree that having a broken femur and surgery is worth much more than $35,000 in pain and suffering. Now, with that said, picture the poorest person that you know, the type of person that can't hold a job. If they crash into you, how much money do you think they're going to personally contribute to your settlement? Likely nothing. And that's what happened in Peter's case. The driver and owner that hit him didn't have money to contribute. A broken femur with surgery generally falls into a pain and suffering range between $250,000 and $500,000. Seems like a lot, but when you're learning to walk again, no amount feels enough. But maybe your injury isn't as severe. Suppose you're driving down the street like Ryan, who was a loving husband and dad. A car turned into his lane and they crashed. Ryan broke the top surface of the big bone under your knee, which is called the tibial plateau. The surgeon drilled the plate and screws into his leg. Ryan hired me. The driver that hit him had $100,000 of insurance coverage. Thankfully, Ryan had uninsured motorist insurance with Travelers. Like many people who have a serious leg injury in an accident, Ryan thought his case would be easy. After all, the other driver got the ticket and Ryan had a broken leg and surgery. And Ryan always paid his car insurance on time, so what could go wrong, right? Here's what. Travelers wouldn't make an offer. Unfortunately, insurance companies often delay and fight cases. even the better ones like Travelers. And when I sued Travelers, they did the unthinkable. They denied liability and blamed Ryan, even though the officer gave the other driver the ticket. Well, we fought back and through heated negotiations settled Ryan's entire case for $300,000. Most tibial plateau fractures with surgery have a pain and suffering value between $250,000 and $350,000. That said, I and another law firm recently settled a slip and fall lawsuit for a tibial plateau fracture with surgery for $1.2 million. Every case is different. Next, let's look at a loving father, Sam, who was riding his bike in a crosswalk when another driver hit him. Sam broke the 3 bones in his ankle and had surgery. In another part of South Florida, Madeline, a sweet mother, stepped onto a hazard in a parking lot and also broke her ankle in 3 places. In Sam's case, Geico insured the driver who hit him. They only offered $100,000 to settle, and you wouldn't believe what happened in Madeline's case. The landscaper's insurer, the Hartford, denied liability, and they're one of the best paying insurance companies. And the Hartford, who also insured the parking lot owner, wouldn't make an offer either. So I investigated and built up both of their cases and settled Sam's for $350,000 and Madeline's for $670,000. The pain and suffering value if you break 2 or 3 bones in your ankle and have surgery is usually between $250,000 to $350,000. Still a sizable amount, but consider the months of rehab and pain. Picture this, you're Alex, soaking up the Miami sun on vacation with your family, just putting something in your rental car when, bam, a federal employee crashes into him. The result? A broken leg with an intramedullary rod drilled down the tibia, which is the bigger of your leg bones. I sued the US government in this case. It was an extremely hard fight, but the combined settlement was for $325,000. If you have an IM rod drilled through your tibia, it's usually worth at least $200,000 in pain and suffering. The same is true if you break your kneecap, the patella, and have wires put in it. That injury is usually worth around $200,000 or more in pain and suffering. The same $200,000 plus value usually applies if a surgeon removes part of your kneecap. Now, knee injuries can be tricky to value. Even something like a torn ACL or MCL in your knee could vary greatly in value. You could be looking at anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 for your pain and suffering, depending on your limitations. Another client, Misty, an amazing person and wife, broke just one of her lower leg bones, her fibula, when she tripped on a raised portion of a condo boardwalk. She said that she didn't see it before she tripped. And then we got some bad news. The condo's insurance company's adjuster blamed Misty for the fall. He said that although the plank was raised a bit, it wasn't dangerous. They also accused her of being drunk, which I disputed. They offered her just $20,000, but I fought back. I hired an expert engineer to inspect the boardwalk before it was renovated. I aggressively negotiated a $100,000 settlement. A surgically repaired lower leg break is often valued at $100,000 to $150,000 for pain and suffering. Or maybe you've torn your meniscus in your knee and have surgery, which can be worth $100,000 or more. Even what some call a minor injury, a torn meniscus without going under the knife, can still have a hefty pain and suffering value when it comes to your daily agony, often around $40,000 in pain and suffering. Another client, Eddie, was driving down the highway when he claimed that a car hit him. Eddie's pickup truck was violently hurled into the unforgiving concrete barrier. The other car took off. Eddie tore 2 ligaments in his ankle. It gets worse. The other driver was long gone and Eddie didn't have uninsured motorist coverage on his auto insurance policy with Geico. But it didn't stop there. I argued that Geico didn't get a proper coverage rejection and therefore he should have $50,000 in uninsured motorist coverage. Eventually, Geico caved and paid us $50,000 in uninsured motorist coverage. The pain and suffering range for a tear of a ligament or tendon in your ankle is between $25,000 and $50,000. Eddie told me that he would not even gotten a penny without a lawyer. Alice was walking in a supermarket parking lot when a car hit her. She was knocked to the ground and had pain in her ankle and her face. An ambulance rushed her to the hospital. Progressive wouldn't make an offer, and that's not shocking. They're one of the worst insurance companies in leg injury cases. Alice didn't need surgery. I pressured Progressive to make an offer. Finally, they made an offer of $50,000. Eventually, through a heated and stressful negotiation, We got Progressive to pay $90,000. Alice was thrilled. The pain and suffering value of an ankle fracture is usually around $25,000 to $50,000. It's more towards the lower end if you're young. Alice got more than the higher end because she was older, had ankle stiffness, and she had an other injury which was bruising to her face. Now, the smallest cases are usually those if you only have pain or bruising in your leg. These may be worth between $1,000 or so to $20,000 in pain and suffering. In these cases, the insurance company will argue that anyone can say that they have pain. So it often helps your case if you have bruises or cuts on your leg, and be sure to point these out to the doctor. You can see that insurance companies don't just roll over and pay you what you think is fair. To have the best chance at getting a big payout for your leg injury, you need to take a few simple and quick steps. And I found that most people don't know to take these steps. To learn what these simple steps are, watch the video here or click on the link in the description below. And if you seriously injured your leg in an accident in Florida or on a cruise and you think that someone else may be at fault, click the link in the description below to see if I could be the lawyer for you.